Michael had always believed in trust. He wasn't the jealous type, never checked his wife's phone, never questioned her late nights with friends. He loved Olivia, believed in their marriage, and thought she felt the same. But Olivia had secrets. At first it was just flirtation, a thrill, a reminder that she was still desired. Then it turned into something more. A series of careful lies, a second phone hidden in her gym bag, a new perfume she never wore around Michael. She convinced herself it was harmless. Michael would never know. And he didn't. Not for a while. Olivia had multiple affairs, each one hidden behind layers of deception. She was careful, erasing messages, using cash for hotel rooms, keeping everything under control. She thought she was untouchable. But the universe has a way of balancing the scales. One evening, Olivia returned home to find Michael unusually quiet. His eyes carried a weight she couldn't decipher. "Everything okay?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah. Just thinking." That was the first sign. The second came when he stopped asking where she was going. No more questions, no more texts. It should have felt like freedom. Instead, it felt like a trap. Then, the boulder dropped. She walked into their bedroom one night and found Michael packing a suitcase. "Where are you going?" she asked, her heart pounding. He turned, eyes calm but cold. "You think I didn't know?" She felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "You thought you were careful, Olivia. You weren't. I knew for months. I just wanted to see how far you'd go." Her mouth went dry. "Mike, He held up a hand. "Don't. I loved you. But you made your choice." And with that, he left. Weeks passed, then months. Olivia tried to move on, but something was different. The men who once pursued her vanished. The thrill of her secret life was gone. And then karma struck. One of the men she had been involved with turned out to be even better at deception than she was. He had played her, just as she had played Michael, stringing her along, making her feel special, only to discard her when he was done. For the first time, she felt the sting of betrayal. One night, drunk and alone, she scrolled through old messages, her finger hovering over Michael's number. She wanted to call, to beg, but she knew. Some betrayals can never be undone. I always believed in trust. Maybe that was my biggest flaw. I never checked Olivia's phone, never questioned her nights out with friends, never doubted the love we had built over the years. That was the foundation of our marriage, unwavering faith in each other. Or so I thought. Looking back, the signs were there, small but unmistakable. The new perfume she never wore around me, the way she suddenly became protective of her phone, the gym bag she always carried with her, even when she wasn't going to the gym. I ignored them, pushed them aside, because confronting the truth was scarier than living in blissful ignorance. Then one day, I found out. Not in a dramatic, gut-wrenching way. Not at first. There was no lipstick on the collar, no love notes left behind. Just a gut feeling that grew heavier, day by day. So I did what I never thought I'd do. I looked, and what I found shattered me. A second phone, hidden at the bottom of her gym bag. The messages were all there, flirty, intimate, undeniable. Multiple names, different men. Some conversations were weeks old, some were from just days ago. I felt my stomach turn as I scrolled through the proof of her betrayal. For a moment I couldn't breathe. My hands shook. My heart pounded so loudly I thought I might pass out. Then, something inside me shifted. Rage, number. Not yet, just cold, calculated clarity. I put the phone back exactly as I found it. I went about my day as if nothing had changed. But inside, I was unraveling. That was the beginning. The moment I decided, if Olivia was playing a game, I would play too. And I would win. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I watched. I listened. I studied every move she made, every excuse she gave. I let her believe she was still in control. She would leave in the evening, dressed a little too perfectly for a girl's night. She would return late, her lipstick slightly smudged, the faint scent of cologne that wasn't mine lingering on her skin. And every time she smiled at me, every time she kissed me goodnight, I felt the weight of her deception pressing down on my chest. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of knowing she had broken me. I was patient. I was calculating. And then, I made my move. It started subtly. I stopped asking questions. No more. Where are you going? Or when will you be home? If she was lying to me, I would let her lie. But I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of thinking I cared. Then, I started pulling away. Small things at first. Less conversation, less affection, an increasing distance between us. I watched as confusion flickered across her face, as if she couldn't quite understand what had changed. She tried harder. She touched me more, spoke softer, played the role of the loving wife. But it was all an act, and I was done playing my part. The night it all came crashing down, she walked into our bedroom to find me packing a suitcase. Her eyes widened. "Where are you going?" I zipped the bag shut and turned to face her. "You think I didn't know?" For the first time I saw fear in her expression. "You thought you were careful, Olivia." My voice was calm. Too calm. "You weren't." Her face drained of color. "Mike, I held up a hand. "Don't." She swallowed hard. "It didn't mean anything." I laughed. A hollow, empty laugh. "It meant everything." Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. As if she realized, too late, that I was no longer the man she had deceived. "I loved you," I said. "But you made your choice." And then, I walked away. I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. I just left her standing there drowning in the weight of her own betrayal. She called. She texted. I ignored every message, because Olivia had spent years chasing thrills, playing games, living in her own little world where consequences didn't exist. But now, the game was over, and for the first time, she was the one left behind. Weeks passed, then months. At first, Olivia tried to pretend nothing had changed. She threw herself into the same reckless habits that had once given her a rush. Flirting, chasing attention, seeking validation in the arms of men who barely knew her name. But something was different now. The men who once pursued her so eagerly didn't stay. They took what they wanted and left. There were no whispered promises, no thrilling secrets, no illusion of power. Just cold, fleeting encounters that left her feeling more hollow than before. And then karma struck. One of the men she had been involved with, Lucas, had seemed different. Attentive. Charming. He made her feel special, just like she had once made Michael believe in their marriage. But Lucas had his own secrets. She discovered the truth the hard way, one evening when she showed up at his apartment unannounced, only to find another woman sitting comfortably on his couch. A woman who looked at Olivia with the same expression Olivia had once worn when she toyed with men who thought they meant something to her. "Oh," the woman said, a smirk playing at her lips. "You must be the Wednesday night girl." Olivia's stomach dropped. "Excuse me?" Lucas stepped into view, arms crossed, completely unfazed. "You didn't really think it was just you, did you?" The words cut deeper than she expected. She had been played, used, discarded, just like she had done to Michael. She wanted to scream, to lash out, to demand an explanation. But what excuse could he give her that she hadn't already used on someone else? She left without another word. For the first time, she felt the weight of betrayal press down on her chest. The same weight Michael must have felt every time she kissed him after being with someone else. The same weight he carried when he packed his suitcase and walked away. She wanted to call him, to beg, to tell him she understood now. But as she hovered over his number, scrolling through old messages, she realized something. Michael hadn't just left her. He had erased her, blocked her number, deleted her from his life. She was nothing to him now, just a shadow of a mistake he refused to acknowledge. And that was the worst punishment of all. The realization hit her like a tidal wave. She was nothing to Michael now, just a stain in his past, a bitter lesson he had learned and moved on from. He hadn't left a door open for her return. He hadn't given her a chance to explain, to plead, to atone. He had simply erased her. And for the first time in her life, Olivia understood what it meant to be truly alone. She spent the following weeks in a haze, drinking too much, going out too often, trying desperately to reclaim the high she once thrived on. But nothing worked. The men she met were just reflections of the life she had built. A shallow, fleeting parade of meaningless faces, none of them staying long enough to fill the void inside her. Then one evening, she made a mistake. It started with a bottle of wine, then another, then a thought she couldn't shake. What if she just saw him, not to talk, not to beg, just to know where he was, how he was doing? Maybe he was struggling too. Maybe despite everything she wasn't the only one suffering. So she did something she swore she would never do. She searched for him, and what she found shattered the last fragile pieces of her self-delusion. Michael was thriving. His social media, which she hadn't dared to check before, was filled with pictures of him smiling, out with friends, traveling, living. There was a lightness in his eyes that she had never seen before. And then, the final blow, a photo of him with another woman. She wasn't just some passing fling, Olivia could tell. The way they stood together, the way he looked at her. It was different. It was real. He had moved on. Completely. Irrevocably. Without her. Olivia felt something inside her break. She wanted to scream, to cry, to throw her phone across the room. But none of it would change the truth. She had gambled with the best thing in her life. And she had lost. And Michael had won. He had walked away from the wreckage of their marriage and built something new, something stronger, something untouched by the poison she had fed into their past. And now, she was nothing more than a shadow, a whisper of regret in the life of a man who no longer even thought of her. For the first time in her life, Olivia understood the true cost of betrayal, and there was no undoing it. The realization hit her like a tidal wave. She was nothing to Michael now, just a stain in his past, a bitter lesson he had learned and moved on from. He hadn't left a door open for her return. He hadn't given her a chance to explain, to plead, to atone. He had simply erased her. And for the first time in her life, Olivia understood what it meant to be truly alone. She spent the following weeks in a haze, drinking too much, going out too often, trying desperately to reclaim the high she once thrived on. But nothing worked. The men she met were just reflections of the life she had built. A shallow, fleeting parade of meaningless faces, none of them staying long enough to fill the void inside her. Then, one evening, she made a mistake. It started with a bottle of wine, then another, then a thought she couldn't shake. What if she just saw him? Not to talk, not to beg, just to know where he was, how he was doing. Maybe he was struggling too. Maybe, despite everything, she wasn't the only one suffering. So she did something she swore she would never do. She searched for him. And what she found shattered the last fragile pieces of her self-delusion. Michael was thriving. His social media, which she hadn't dared to check before, was filled with pictures of him smiling, out with friends, traveling, living. There was a lightness in his eyes that she had never seen before. And then, the final blow. A photo of him with another woman. She wasn't just some passing fling. Olivia could tell. The way they stood together. The way he looked at her. It was different. It was real. He had moved on. Completely. Irrevocably. Without her. Olivia felt something inside her break. She wanted to scream. To cry. To throw her phone across the room. But none of it would change the truth. She had gambled with the best thing in her life, and she had lost. And Michael had won. He had walked away from the wreckage of their marriage and built something new, something stronger, something untouched by the poison she had fed into their past. And now, she was nothing more than a shadow, a whisper of regret in the life of a man who no longer even thought of her. For the first time in her life, Olivia understood the true cost of betrayal, and there was no undoing it. Olivia spiraled. The engagement announcement was a final, crushing blow, confirming what she had been too proud or too delusional to admit. There would be no second chances, no redemption arc where she begged for forgiveness, and Michael, against all odds, took her back. He had wiped her from his life like she was nothing more than a stain. For weeks she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face, not with anger or heartbreak, but indifference. He didn't hate her. That would have meant she still had some place in his heart. No, he had moved on so completely that she was nothing to him. And that was worse than hatred. Her nights blurred together in a haze of alcohol and self-loathing. She tried distractions, new men, empty conversations, anything to fill the void. But they all left her feeling even more hollow. None of them looked at her the way Michael had. None of them cared. Then karma delivered its final, devastating twist. One evening she received a message from him. Daniel, the man who had once been her thrilling, passionate escape from Michael. The man who had promised her excitement, secrecy, something different. The man who had discarded her the second she became inconvenient. Her heart lurched as she stared at the message. It was simple, almost casual. "Hey, stranger. Been a while." Her fingers clenched around her phone. She should ignore it. She should delete it. But a flicker of something dark and desperate flared inside her. She responded. The conversation started slow, reminiscing, inside jokes, little teases. It felt familiar, like slipping into an old habit. He flirted, made her laugh, made her forget, for just a moment, how broken she felt. And then he suggested meeting up. She knew it was a bad idea. She knew this was the same man who had once played her like a fool, just as she had played Michael. But self-destruction was all she had left. She agreed. They met at a sleek rooftop bar, the kind of place where expensive cocktails and whispered secrets filled the air. He looked the same, cocky, confident, dangerous. The kind of man who had once thrilled her because he was the opposite of the safe, devoted husband she had taken for granted. But now, as he smiled at her, something felt off. It took her a while to realize why. He was looking at her the way she used to look at Michael, like she was just another temporary thrill. The realization hit her like a freight train. She had destroyed the best thing in her life for this. For a man who never loved her, who had used her as a game piece in his own twisted version of fun. And now, she wasn't even worth playing with anymore. She was just another name in his phone. Another woman who had fallen for his charm and been discarded. As he leaned in, murmuring some empty compliment. She saw it all with crystal clarity. She had become the thing she once despised, a foolish woman chasing something that never really existed. She pulled away. "I have to go," she muttered. Daniel frowned but didn't protest. He didn't chase after her, because he didn't care. She walked out of the bar into the cold night, her breath shaky, her mind spinning. For the first time she saw the full weight of what she had done, not just to Michael but to herself. She had lost everything. And the worst part, she had no one to blame but herself. The loneliness was unbearable. For weeks, Olivia drifted through life like a ghost, existing but not truly living. She avoided mirrors because she hated the reflection staring back at her. Tired, empty, unrecognizable. She stopped going to the places she once loved because everything reminded her of what she had lost. Michael was gone, and not just in the physical sense. He had erased her so completely that it was as if their life together had never existed. She tried to reach out once. A simple text. "Can we talk?" The message sat unread for days before disappearing altogether. He had blocked her. That was the moment she knew. Michael wasn't just moving on. He had already moved. She saw it unfold in real time. Their mutual friends stopped inviting her places. His social media, once a familiar place filled with shared memories, became a foreign world where she didn't belong. She saw glimpses of his new life, smiling, happy, thriving. His fiancée was beautiful, effortlessly elegant in a way Olivia never was. And worst of all, she looked at Michael the way Olivia used to, before she ruined everything. The realization shattered her. She wanted to hate his new fiancé, to pick apart her flaws, to tell herself that Michael would never love her the way he once loved Olivia. But deep down she knew that wasn't true. Michael had finally found what he deserved, and Olivia was left with exactly what she had earned. Nothing. Her world shrank into a cycle of regret and self-pity. She drank too much, spent nights staring at the ceiling, wondering how things had gone so wrong. Every time she thought she had hit rock bottom, the universe found a way to drag her even lower. Then came the final humiliation. A former friend, one of the few who still spoke to her, invited her to a small gathering. It was meant to be a casual night, a chance to escape her thoughts for a while. But she never expected him to be there. Michael. He was standing across the room, looking effortlessly put together, in a way that made Olivia's stomach twist. He hadn't just moved on. He had flourished, and beside him his fiancée. They looked perfect together. She wanted to leave, run, hide, anything but stand there, exposed and vulnerable. But before she could move, Michael's eyes met hers. For a brief second, something flickered in his gaze. Recognition, maybe even pity. But not love. Not anymore. And that's when Olivia realized the worst part of all. Michael didn't hate her. She had wished for that, had convinced herself that if he hated her, it meant she still mattered, that she still held some place in his heart, even if it was filled with rage. But there was no anger in his eyes, no resentment, no bitterness, just indifference. She was nothing to him now, just a mistake he had learned from. As he turned away, placing a gentle hand on his fiancée's back, guiding her toward their friends, Olivia felt the finality of it all. She had lost him, not just as a husband, not just as a lover, but as a memory. She was the past, and Michael, he was finally free. Olivia left the party without saying goodbye. She barely remembered the walk home, her mind consumed by the echo of Michael's indifference. It was worse than anger, Worse than hatred. He had forgotten her, or at least he had trained himself to stop caring. The weight of that truth crushed her. Back in her apartment, she sank onto the floor, the silence pressing in around her. She had no one to call, no one who would listen. She had spent so many years chasing cheap thrills, believing she was invincible, untouchable. And now, she was nothing but a cautionary tale. For the first time, she let herself really feel it, the depth of her own destruction. She had betrayed a man who had truly loved her, a man who would have given her the world. And for what? The fleeting validation of men who never cared about her? The thrill of deception? None of it had been worth it. None of it. She grabbed her phone again, scrolling through old texts, desperate to find some version of herself that wasn't broken. But every message felt like a ghost of a life she had thrown away. Her thumb hovered over Michael's name. Unblock him. Call him. Say something. Anything. But she knew it wouldn't change anything. She had made her choices, and Michael had made his. Her eyes burned, but she refused to cry. She had done this to herself, and no one was coming to save her. Some betrayals can never be undone. Some losses are permanent, and some people never get a second chance. Weeks turned into months. Olivia went through the motions of life, but everything felt hollow. The once thrilling excitement of new lovers had disappeared, replaced by a crushing loneliness she couldn't escape. She tried to fill the void. She re-downloaded the dating apps, forced herself to smile at men in bars, but nothing felt the same. Every interaction felt forced, every touch meaningless. Worse, the men who once pursued her so eagerly now seemed to sense something different about her. She had lost the shine, the energy, the spark that had once made her feel untouchable. She had fallen, and the world could smell it on her. Michael, on the other hand, had only risen. One evening, scrolling through social media with a glass of wine she didn't even want, she saw a post that made her stomach drop. A picture of Michael, smiling, happy. And he wasn't alone. A woman stood beside him, her hand resting on his chest, her face radiant with effortless joy. A caption below read, "Some things fall apart, so better things can fall together." Olivia's fingers tightened around her phone. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She clicked on the woman's profile. Perfect. Beautiful. The kind of woman who had never needed validation from strangers. Someone whole. Someone strong. Someone who had never made the mistakes Olivia had. Michael had moved on. And he wasn't just existing. He was thriving. A wave of nausea hit her so hard she nearly dropped the glass in her hand. It was real now. Truly real. He wasn't hers anymore. He would never be hers again. She had spent so long assuming there would be time. That one day she could fix things. That she could find the right words, the right moment, the right excuse. But now, there was nothing left to fix. She had burned the bridge, and Michael had never looked back. She put the phone down, stared at the wall. For the first time, it hit her. The full weight of what she had lost. Michael had once loved her more than anything. And now, she was nothing more than a lesson he had learned. Michael had always believed that justice had a way of catching up. He just never thought he'd be the one to deliver it. Months after his departure, Michael's life had transformed. He had rebuilt himself, piece by piece, without the weight of betrayal crushing his chest. He had met someone honest, someone real, but something inside him still itched. An unfinished chapter in the story of Olivia's deception. Olivia, on the other hand, had unraveled. The men she had once seduced had moved on. their interest fading the moment they sensed her desperation. The one man she had fallen for, the one who had made her feel special, had ghosted her the moment she thought they were something real. And then came the ultimate blow. One by one, Michael exposed every lie she had ever told. He had quietly collected evidence, screenshots, receipts, even conversations she thought had been erased forever. He never wanted revenge, but he wanted truth. And truth, when unleashed, was devastating. Her friends turned against her. The perfect social circle she had carefully curated crumbled. Even her job, which once valued her charm, began to see through the cracks. She had built her world on illusions, and Michael had simply lifted the curtain. The final nail in the coffin came one evening when Olivia received an email from her employer. Due to concerns regarding professionalism and integrity, we regret to inform you. She didn't even finish reading it. Her career, one of the only things she still had, was gone. Not long after, a well-timed leak of her affair spread through every corner of her life. Friends whispered. Family distanced themselves. She had always thought she could control the narrative, that she could be the one who left before things fell apart. Now, she was the outcast. And Michael, he was untouched, untainted. He had walked away clean while she drowned in the consequences of her own making. Michael watched from a distance as Olivia's world imploded, not with joy, not with sorrow, just understanding. She had gambled everything on the thrill of deceit, and when the cards finally landed, she had nothing left to bet. His life had changed. New love, new purpose, new happiness. But hers was a cautionary tale. One evening, Olivia, drunk and desperate, sent him a single message. "Can we talk?" Michael stared at the screen, expression unreadable. Then, with a calm exhale, he deleted the message. Some things weren't worth revisiting. Some doors weren't meant to be reopened. And some betrayals, they were meant to be left behind.